Even though the movies are for kids to enjoy and family to have fun movie nights, Disney movies are full of shockingly dark scenes that traumatize those who grew up with them. From Mufasa's death to essentially the entire plot of Pinocchio. We still find some of them disturbing and get emotional while watching them. But sometimes there are messed up moments in these movies that are subtle enough that you don't actually pick up on them until years later. That is where you can't believe something so disturbing was hiding in one of your favorite movies all along. Whether they're so well hidden that they're almost impossible to catch and think about at that moment, or whether they're just scenes with implications our innocent minds couldn't understand as kids is debatable. But we are not getting into that here today. We will talk about some of the craziest scenes in Disney movies that have some secret messed up meanings. But before we get into that, don't forget to subscribe to our channel. Number 1. Clayton's body hangs from the vines in Tarzan. At the end of Tarzan, the villain Clayton becomes trapped in vines and falls to his death. This is often how Disney movies kill the antagonist. They just kind of fall off camera. This way, Disney can kill the character without showing the kids the body and scarring them for life.
Clayton, don't!
Except Disney totally does show us the body. After Clayton falls, the movie cuts to a shot of one of the vines, and it's implied that he is hanged. Then it cuts to a shot of Clayton's machete laying on the ground. Our eyes immediately focus on the machete and then on Tarzan landing. This may have caused you to overlook the fact that Clayton's dead body casts a fairly graphic shadow in the background. Not having noticed this as a kid is extremely common. On the YouTube upload of this scene, the comments section is chock full of people only seeing the shadow for the first time now. It's like the film equivalent of discovering the Hanged Man at the beginning of the Haunted Mansion ride. Once you see it, you'll not notice it. Number 2. The Lion King. Such a glorious, soul-shattering, fun-filled movie about dying parents and boars singing songs and stuff like that. This is the film that taught us about the circle of life, and it's also another Disney movie where the animators could not help themselves and just had to get all kinky when no one was paying attention. In one scene pictured above, while our attention is focused on the lion, the shifting stars up in the galaxy above seem to spell out the word sex. Though some can say this one is contested, most people think it's pretty clear. But Disney is known for hiding this particular word in most of their films. We are pretty sure that is what's going on here. At one point, you figure one of these animators would be like, okay, we get it. Hiding inappropriate stuff in a kid's cartoon is funny. Number 3. Frozen. Frozen is one of the best Disney movies, and it took the world by storm when it was released in 2013. We all know someone, kid or adult, who still hasn't been able to let it go and still talks about it. The film has a lot of funny jokes and moments for the whole family to enjoy.
Watch out for my butt!
While this one isn't a visual moment, it's still a sneaky little sexual reference. And since this is such a beloved film, we've decided to include it here, since not many people seem to have picked up on it. While sitting on the vehicle at night, Kristoff asks Anna about the guy who she got engaged to. After a few questions, he asks her about his foot size and replies that size doesn't matter line, which is very famous in adults, and every adult watching it might have gotten it.
What's his favorite food?
Sandwiches.
Best friend's name?
Probably John.
Eye color.
Dreamy.
Foot size?
Foot size doesn't matter.
Turns out Anna is more interested in Hans for his personality than the size of some other size. If that doesn't scream feminism, then we don't know what does. Number 4. The Little Mermaid. The real shocking moment in The Little Mermaid was the scene where the priest who is marrying the fish and human dude suddenly gets a visible erection. Granted, it's not much of an erection, but it's clearly there. He was getting an erection over a man marrying a fish. Actually, that's pretty weird too, come to think of it. The hidden adult joke from The Little Mermaid was so risque that due to complaints, it was removed from scenes when it was re-released in 2006. The scene had an R-rated moment that adults watching it closely with some interest noticed, and actually caused some uproar that such scenes shouldn't be in kids-rated movies. This is one of the examples when Disney tried to come out and call everyone nuts, but some argue that it was, well, something else. We will let you decide, but whatever it was, the scene is definitely not meant for kids. Number 5. The incinerator scene in Toy Story. Toy Story is an incredibly successful franchise, especially when you consider how often sequels get forgotten. But that's certainly not the case for Toy Story 2 or Toy Story 3. Each gained critical acclaim, and the latter became the highest-grossing animated movie ever, until Frozen came around. Now Toy Story 4 is out too, and we are still to get data on that. It only dealt with the difficulties of growing up and change. It also shows the impact these things have on friendship. A very emotional moment comes at the ending of the movie, when the whole gang, including Woody, are stuck inside an incinerator and is about to get, well, incinerated. When all hope seems lost, the friends decide that it's time to accept their fate and hold hands as they await their terrifying death. Never before had we seen animated characters give up and accept death. This level of hopelessness is an emotion usually only dealt with in adult films, but to show that in a kids and family movie, that shows the Disney world is darker than we think it is. Number 6. Pinocchio in the donkey scene. For some, Pinocchio is their least favorite Disney movie, and there's a very valid reason for this. Pinocchio witnesses the unfathomable. This movie did not perform as well as other Disney classics of the era, and this may be down to its harsh representation of good and evil. When Pinocchio and his new friend Lampwick are tricked into going to Pleasure Island, revealing the island's true nature, Lampwick and the other boys are transformed into donkeys to be sold as slaves. Before their transformation, the boys can be seen smoking and drinking to their heart's content. But later we see Lampwick depicted as a grotesque little boy, painfully devolved into a hoofed animal. He loses the ability to speak, which makes him have an emotional breakdown. Although Pinocchio does escape before being completely transformed, Lampwick is forgotten about because he, unlike Pinocchio, strayed on to an evil path. It's a rather unforgiving and truly terrifying way of preaching the importance of good behavior to a child. Number 7. Racism in Aladdin. There's a lot of racial controversy surrounding old Disney flicks. In The Aristocrats, there is a cat who plays piano with chopsticks while singing about fortune cookies, and the writer of Dumbo confessed in his book, the Disney version, to having portrayed the crows as African-American stereotypes after viewers deemed him racist. It gets worse the more you go back in the past. After the movie was released, after almost 1 year, the intro song was changed from where they cut off your ear if they don't like your face, to where it's flat and immense and the heat is intense.
Where they cut off your ear if they don't like your face. It's barbaric, but hey, it's home.
The original verse illustrates a barbaric and horrible picture of the Middle East, so it had to go. There has also been much criticism concerning the westernization of the characters in the film, whereas the baddies have foreign accents and darker skin.
When the wind's from the east and the sun's from the west and the sand in the glass is right.
Number 8. Uncle Waldo from Aristocats. The drunk goose Uncle Waldo is one of the most comical characters to ever grace a Disney film. His character is so realistic that if he weren't a goose, there would be his look-alike with the same habits, and he wouldn't be hard to find.
Abigail! Amelia!
When the cats meet Abigail and Amelia, a pair of posh geese, they bump into Waldo, who has managed to escape a restaurant kitchen, where he was about to be served up as a main course.
Look at this! Prime country goose!
To make matters worse, Uncle Waldo is on white wine. It is a known fact that white wine marinated goose is a delicacy in France. Even if you don't get that Uncle Waldo was totally hammered when you were younger, there's no way you would miss it now. It's a pretty dark scene, as the goose resembles pretty much any passerby at 4 a.m. on a Saturday night. We're not generalizing, so if you feel offended by it, we apologize, but you cannot ignore the uncanny resemblance. Number 9. The Witch's Death in Snow White. As said before, the early Disney movies are a creep, weird, and sometimes racist in different ways. Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs is not any different, not least because of the 1930s style cartoons have kind of a spooky quality about them. The queen, who later transforms into a hideous-looking witch, has only hate for the beautiful Snow White. In order to poison her, she gives Snow White a poisonous apple to munch on, casting her into an eternal sleep. When the dwarves attempt to capture her, she makes her way to the edge of a cliff, which is suddenly struck by lightning, causing the witch to fall to her death with a piercing screech. A pair of vultures gaze at her before proceeding to circle the fresh meat. She may have been the villain, but that's still pretty dark if you ask us. Number 10. Trippin' in Alice in Wonderland. Alice in Wonderland remains one of the most imaginative children's books ever written. It had such a huge influence that it was adapted into a book and is still used. The animated effort was able to capture the eeriness of the Wonderland that for many children was as captivating as it was haunting. There's no shortage of curious and unfriendly creatures here, such as the hookah-smoking caterpillar, who pushes Alice into making some terrible decisions. When Alice goes to the caterpillar, who is clearly high on his own supply, for help, the spongy creature offers her a bite of his mushroom, which gives her the ability to be as tall as a giant, or as small as an ant. If this sounds an awful lot like she was given a certain hallucinogenic substance, then it looks like we're all on the same page. That is our list for the Disney movie scenes with messed up meanings. What do you think was the most shocking moment in Disney history? Tell us in the comments. Remember to like this video and subscribe with notifications on.